Thank you, Sebastian. Right, I'm very excited actually to be here for the second year. But my first question to all of you is, how many are actually excited about testing? Oh, a few brave hands. I can tell you, once I saw Cypress and got to try it out, I can tell you all of your hands will come up at the end of this session. I really hope so, because this test runner is something else. How many have tried Cypress? And how many were excited about testing? Pretty much the same hands, right? The rest of you are like, no, I hate testing. Yeah, I mean, I'm with you, right? Before this kind of test runner, I was on the negative side. Of course, I would be blamed if I didn't write my test, so I did it as part of my job. That's why we do things, right? A lot of things. We're way more excited about building a feature. Right, my day job is that of a senior cloud developer advocate at Microsoft, but as Sebastian was saying, I'm writing a ton of blog posts and books and whatever else. You can probably find some of my stuff out there if you try to Google. Let's talk about the features of Cypress, why we have a reason to be excited. End-to-end tests. Most of us don't have a good association with end-to-end tests for a reason. They are flaky, am I right? We try to run the same test twice, and sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. We didn't change any kind of code. They promise us, Cypress promises us that these end-to-end tests should be flake-free. That sounds amazing, right? Also, network traffic control, which means that we will be able to mock and stub and do a lot of other things. And another thing that's been really painful in the past is that of automatic waiting, or waiting at all. Because in end-to-end test, you don't really know, is my page there? Can I see the button? There's a lot of waits, right? And a lot of timing issues, and that's really why we have this flake problem. But of course, also when it comes to tests, we want screenshots if something goes wrong. We want videos if something goes wrong, so we can go in there and fix it. So why? I mean, we understand that our lead developer or our boss or whoever it is says testing is super important, you should do it. It is a crucial part of what we do. How many of you are using VS Code today? How many of you are using Notepad? Probably no one, right? Or a few hands. So what I'm trying to say here is that a good tool is really the reason why we want to work with anything. And that's the case with Cypress. But we also need reliability. We need to be able to trust our tests. And lastly, if something is agnostic, if we can apply the same test suite to whatever React, Vue, Svelte application we have, and we write those tests once, that's what we want, right? Because the reality is that how much we want, we don't only work with Angular. We got a bunch of projects, some of us, that we need to maintain. And we need to write those tests once. As for installing Cypress, this is a very simple matter. It's as simple as doing npm install Cypress at your project that you're running. As for running Cypress, it's one command that you need to remember. Cypress open, that's it. There are different ways of doing it. I think probably my favorite way of doing it is the third from the top, which says mpx Cypress open. Just open Cypress. What does that mean? Well, the first time that we open up or call Cypress open, we get this thing on top here from the terminal. It says verified Cypress, everything is go. Then what? It's going to open this browser window for us, and the first time we run this, it will have done some things for us. What it has done is to create this Cypress folder. Under that folder, it has an integration folder. Under that folder, it has a sample test folder, and I want you to remember this sample test folder for a reason. It contains every single type of thing that you can ever want to do with Cypress. So remember that. The first time you run Cypress open, you get a lot of tests in there that will tell you things, right? A lot of us learn more from code than actually reading documentation. If we can just take part of that code, fix it, and it works, that's what we want. But also for you adding new tests in there, you just add them under the integration folder under Cypress and you're good. Right, so here we have created a file. We have gone in under Cypress integration, created this sample spec file, and it just shows up in real time. The only thing we did here was to just say save in our VS Code application, right? And this thing is still running. There was no reload happening. Well, the automatic reload, but I didn't have to stop it and then start it again. That's my point. And of course, we want to write our first hello world test. And we do so by using what we know, which is describes, it, expect. We all know those, right? And on our right here, we can see that we are getting our browser window. And once we click the test, this is what we're going to see. So it's going to give us the name of the test, and it's going to say you did some kind of assertion, expected true, and everybody's happy. But we all know what a useless test this is, right? It doesn't really test anything of value. But let's do a failing test before we move on to a real one. So here we just say expect true to be false, and of course that's not correct. As for a real test, what do we want to do? Well, you can use Cypress for both unit testing and end-to-end testing, but in this case we're going to try to use it for end-to-end testing, or at least front-end testing. So we're going to go to a page. Once we're on a page, we're going to locate a certain element, we're going to interact with that element, and after that we want to assert on it. This is the steps that we go through when we define a test. So first thing, we create our new test file, page spec, we call it, you can call it whatever you want. So we want to visit. We do that with the global object sci, and then sci visit, give it a URL. And that's it. So what you see here when in our test runner is to the left, you see what's going on. It says it's the command visit, and on our right, we actually see it happening. Now this is important because this means that we have snapshots that happens on every single command. So you can just step through every single command and see what is the change between me doing a visit, some interaction, and some assertion. We'll come to that. So as for querying for an element, we can use many types of helper methods for this. One we can use is called contains. So contains looks for a certain part of text. Looking at the browser window here, we can see that actually type lights up. And that's great, right? We can visually see that it finds the element in question. And also we have a second command now. So we have visit because we went to the page, and contains because we're looking for an element. Lastly, we have the interaction. There are many ways we could interact with an element. We could be selecting from a list, or we can click it. In this case, we click it. So we have our element that we have located, and we just add click on top of it, and we have some kind of change that happens. We went from a page that was merely, well, almost white to a lot of text. And assertion is our next step, and we do that with the should method. So here we just tell it, you should have a URL right now with some kind of stuff prepended on it. So here we have commands and actions. So we have actually changed the URL when we did this click, but we should also check the action email element that we have located and make sure it has the empty string value. So looking at our test again, inside of our test runner, we see that we have the URL assertion, and we got another assertion where we check the form element. And as you can see, I am highlighting the form element, and it looks good, it's empty. All right. As I said, there are many ways to get your element. Here are two of them. I'm sure there are more. Contain simply locates a certain text on an element, whereas get, you're able to provide it with a selector. So this could be you looking for a certain class, or an ID, or whatever it is. There are quite a few interactions that we can do to this element. Depending on what it is, we could be clicking, double-clicking, right-clicking, and so on. I'm just going to leave this page as a reference for you. You're going to get the slide after this talk. As for debugging, I mean, we use debugging when something goes wrong, right? So we want the best possible way to do debugging. And in Cypress, you got two major options. One is calling the pause, and the other one is calling debug. I'm going to show you the difference between these two. But so with debug, you can actually just place it right smack in the middle of your code, or you can do debug, as I've shown you here, right after I locate a certain element, before the click. So here, for example, we have a case where we add the pause in the middle of the code, right? So it's going to try to carry out visit, contains, URL. Once it's done those three steps, then it's going to pause. It's not going to do the rest until we say so. So in this case, we get some kind of status bar here at the top where it says, I am paused. You can also press play, so you can continue, or you can also use the step. So we can step through the remaining commands in the test. As for debugging, this is a bit different experience. Remember, there were two different ones, right? I mean, pause being one, debug being the other. So what debug does is it's using the debugger that we all know in JavaScript. And as you can see, it's also writing stuff in the console. So this is like a complementary way of doing debugging. Now, let's see, yeah. Adding Cypress to Angular, that's why we're here, right? We want to know how can we actually use this in our Angular application. The answer is quite simple. So we start up our Angular project, then we do a simple npm install of Cypress. Once we've done that, we call Cypress open, and as I said before, this is going to create a directory for us with a bunch of sample tests and the integration folder. So what we need to do as Angular developers are to keep on adding tests to Cypress integration. And, you know, this is a recommended thing, but I always add a task to package JSON to make it easy to use Cypress, because we need to keep one thing in mind. If we're going to run end-to-end test on our application, it needs to be up and running. So I usually use a module called concurrently, so I'm able to run the Angular project, but also Cypress at the same time, so it can just carry out what it needs. And we've also got TypeScript support. Can you imagine writing something today without TypeScript? We almost can't, right? We as developers, we are a bit spoiled, at least as Angular developers. Let's look at something quite simple. This one is using static data, so you kind of like, I'm always using an API, but I have an example for that as well. So here we're going to try to do a simple CRUD, which means we're going to have a list of things, heroes in this case, and we're going to try to add to them, remove, update, and so on. We want to test all that behavior. First off, we need to verify that our list looks good, so we're able to locate the element, check that it has 2 items in the list, that's all good. Then what? We want to try to add an item to a list, so first off we use the command type, and this is what we use in an input box to just add text to it. And we want to make sure that it contains what it should contain, because imagine that we don't have an ng module, what am I saying here? Imagine that we don't have a two-way binding inside of an input, right? It's going to break. So we need to verify that we've done everything we should, and then we need to click that add button. So at this point we have filled in a text element, we have clicked an add button, and we need to make sure that that input box is also cleared, right? Because we don't want people to add the same item twice. And lastly, we try to verify that our list is actually containing what it should be containing. Then for update, it's quite simple. We just verify that we have this Captain Marvel entry. Then we try to change this input box somehow, because we have a row with an input box. Then we click, and lastly we verify that the change has taken place. And with deletion, this is as simple as clicking one of the delete buttons on the row, and just verifying that it has actually disappeared. Now let's have a look at the demo here for this. So here we're looking at the running test. It's running all the tests I just talked about. And we can easily see that 1, we are verifying we have the X number of elements. 2, we are checking that it has added the Hulk to the list. And once we check the assertion, it should be updating the item itself. So that's the third action. And we can just go through all the steps. This is what it looks like live when you try to use it. And yeah, as expected, our update has happened. It's now Captain Marvel's instead of Marvel, right? And lastly, we have a deletion. And the only thing we do in a deletion is hit that remove button for that specific unit. And we can just verify, once we hit it, that it should be gone. So we hit that remove, we click it, and yeah, we lose a hero. So it seems like our to-do list is working as it should. But this is static data. Static data is not really what we want. What we want is to be able to mock this sometime. So mocking is a very interesting discussion when it comes to end-to-end, because is it really true end-to-end if we're mocking part of the backend? Well, sometimes we actually have those scenarios where it makes sense. And where it makes sense is, for example, when you want to put an application in a certain state, and you, like, imagine you have an e-commerce site and you got a cart. You don't want to have to go through all those scenarios of adding 3 items to the cart, so maybe I could just mock from an endpoint and say that cart actually has 3 items, or I'm really logged in as a normal user, or I'm logged in as an admin. So you can imagine that there are a few cases where it makes sense to mock. To enable mocking, we call size server, first of all, to tell it it's okay to mock. Secondly, we call this cyroute command where we say HTTP verb is get, so server, and then we say, okay, here's a URL endpoint I want you to mock, and I want you to respond with this instead. And for a real mocking case, we do this for /products, and we respond with some kind of list. So let's demo how that would work. So here we see that we actually get mock tomato back. So it's actually responding with mock data instead of the real API. Now if we go into our code in VS Code and just comment this out, take away the mocking. We want the API endpoint to respond instead, which it does. And now suddenly I get DVD and book instead of that mock tomato, right? So I'm able to go in and out of this mocking behavior. Right. We've all seen this meme, right? This sucks a bit because I don't want to really have to type this inline code. Isn't there a more elegant approach to this? Yes, there is, and it's called fixtures. Now, fixtures is all about JSON files. You have the fixtures directory at Cypress, and you can just add whatever you need in there. So you can have a bunch of different JSON files that contains all your fixtures. So in this case, I've just made sure that heroes list JSON is something I want to mock away. The first thing I do here in my sci fixture is to say, well, I want to fetch up this JSON list that's located on heroes list JSON. I want to give it some kind of alias. I call that alias heroes list. And here I refer to this alias when I'm saying that if this URL happens, respond with this JSON. You can mock pretty much anything in your application, and you can have tons of different JSON files if you have a quite large app. This is me at Ignite in Florida. In case you're wondering what's going on, I'm trying to get myself heard because the mic didn't work. So I'm pushing out fireballs. This is how I feel about Cypress right now, because it's pretty good. We can also, of course, add TypeScript. And the reason why it's so easy to add TypeScript is because they're giving us the types already. So the only thing we need to do is to create a tsconfig JSON file under the Cypress folder with this content. And that's it. Then we get this. We have this global sci object, and suddenly it has a lot of methods on it. We can autocomplete. This is what we're used to when we're coding Angular, am I right? Another fireball. Yeah. I hear your excitement from here. What about screenshots? Screenshots are super simple. We can just add this screenshots folder, and we just add this lifecycle method after each, and we just say sci screenshot. We've done that on the list here that we're testing, and we're suddenly getting 4 different images that we can just walk through, and we can see each and every single step. We also have a videos folder that can actually take videos for us, which is also amazing. You seem very impressed. So, in summary, we have an amazing test runner. We have really powerful assertions. We have pause and debug. And believe me on this, I don't take a good debugging experience for granted. We got mocking, where we can choose between inline code and fixtures. I vote fixtures. And we also have Angular plus Cypress, or Vue, or Svelte, or whatever application. Point is, Cypress just works. You just npm install it, and it works. And you saw yourself how easy it was to add TypeScript to it. And I cannot stress this enough, but the docs at Cypress are really, really good. If you're trying to use Cypress, definitely use those. As for my demo today, so you can try everything out, it's located at the last link here, the one called SoftCris Cypress Demo. So if you want to try everything that I did with fixtures and everything else. But there are plenty of good docs here. I'm giving you everything from the easy path with installing Cypress to writing your first test and digging yourself into this. I'm super excited about testing, to be honest, after having used Cypress. I'm not just saying this today. So thank you all very much for listening.